Peace, and welcome to another episode of the Quranic Remedies, where we spend about 15 minutes exploring a page from the Quran together and seeing how we can apply the verses to our lives. And hopefully, with God's permission, it helps us heal our brain, body, mind, and soul. So today we'll be reading from chapter 4, The Women, from verses 92 to 95. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek refuge to God from the accursed devil. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful. وما كان لمؤمن أن يقتل مؤمنا إلا خطأ ومن قتل مؤمنا خطأ فتحرير رقبة مؤمنة ودية مسلمة إلى أهله إلا أن يصدقوا فإن كان من قوم عدو لكم وهو مؤمن فتحرير رقبة مؤمنة وإن كان من قوم بينكم وبينهم ميثاق فدية مسلمة إلى أهله وتحرير رقبة مؤمنة فمن لم يجد فصيام شهرين متتابعين توبة من الله وكان الله عليما حكيما. Never should a believer kill another believer unless by error. Anyone who kills a believer by error must set free a believing slave and pay compensation to the victim's family unless they remit it as a charity. If the victim belonged to a people who are hostile to you but is a believer, then the compensation is to free a believing slave. If he belonged to a people with whom you have a treaty, then compensation should be handed over to his family and a believing slave set free. Anyone who lacks the means must fast for 2 consecutive months by way of repentance to God. God is all-knowing, most wise. ومن يقتل مؤمنا متعمدا فجزاؤه جهنم خالدا فيها وغضب الله عليه ولعنه وعد له عذابا عظيما. Whoever kills a believer deliberately, then the penalty for him is hell, where he will remain forever, and God will be angry with him and will curse him and will prepare for him a terrible punishment. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا ضربتم في سبيل الله فتبينوا ولا تقولوا لمن ألقى إليكم السلام لست مؤمنا تبتغون عرض الحياة الدنيا فعند الله مغانم كثيرة كذلك كنتم من قبل فمن الله عليكم فتبينوا إن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا. O you who believe, when you journey in the way of God, investigate, and do not say to whom offers you peace, you're not a believer, aspiring for the goods of this world. With God's are abundant riches. You yourself were like this before, and God bestowed favor upon you. So investigate. God is well aware of what you do. Sadaqallah al-Azim. God the Great said the truth. Now, there are situations where, unfortunately, people turn on each other. Now, something that's very amazing that God has revealed to us, that just because we are a believer does not mean that there can't be hostility between groups of believers. And there's another verse somewhere later that we're going to cover in the Quran in regards to when 2 believing factions start to fight each other, then you have to suppress the one that has transgressed and fight them until they stop fighting, and then try to make peace between your brothers. For us, we are believers and we should make peace. Now notice here what one of the conditions, if that there is a hostility, or if you guys are enemies in regards to who you are as tribes or as a culture or other means or reasons why you should be enemies. Now, obviously, with your enemies, there are ways that you need to act, especially if they're believers, in where you give the person their respect, you give them their space, and you try not to interact with them more than you have to because you are not able to see eye to eye. Not everybody is always inviting to peace, but yet they are capable of maintaining the peace, not because they like each other, but rather so that they stay attached to God. So it is normal for 2 believing people or 2 believing communities to be at each other's necks, but there is a way for us to proceed with such a way in where that we try to always incline towards peace. And you have your slice of the pie, I have my slice of the pie, and there's no need for extra communication or extra interactions in where we would end up possibly hurting each other. Now, one thing that is also clear here is that these attributes that God states about himself at the end of certain verses, where God is clarifying more so with the verses also explaining. When God is saying God is all-knowing, most wise, in a verse about killing somebody by accident or an error, the only entity that can truly tell that if it was on error or if it was malicious and it was on purpose is God. Because you yourself is capable of knowing it. but no one else can truly understand why you're doing what you're doing just because you're capable of acting or say certain things or doing certain things where it shows that you did not mean to be malicious or harmful. You were trying to be somebody who is pious and you did it by mistake. And God states that those people who do it by mistake, right, that there is a way for them to reach repentance. Now notice how, because somebody is dying, somebody is put to death, and as God states that a soul is for a soul, here instead of putting someone else to death as recompense because it was an error made in an error of judgment or by accident, and here you are technically giving somebody else his life back. Yes, the concept of slavery still exists in this day and age. It's not as chattel slavery where people are being bounded and mistreated and completely engulfed in whoever their master is, and then they get abused and killed and tortured. That's the type of slavery that we constantly keep hearing about in regards to what they did in the North American and South American regions in recent history. But there is a form of slavery which Islam does kind of show. Where imagine somebody who has a household and he has a wife and he doesn't want the wife to sit and have to deal with the kids all day or to cook. So he would go hire a maid, as we would call him nowadays, a servant. But this maid lives with you. She lives in the house. She eats from your food. She's always present with you, and you completely have control over her life and what she does and what she doesn't do. Obviously, there are some rights upon her and rights upon you because there's an oath between you guys. And now, in this case, she is a servant, and she is somebody that you can, in older times, completely control, where you own her as almost like a property where you own as a human being. It is not the form of slavery that people understand, but rather it's people under your household. And it is upon you to take care of these people and make them feel like your family. This is something that is still present in the Middle East. And obviously there are people who abuse it and they hurt their servants and the people that work with them. And then there are people who understand what God is saying and they use them to the best way possible, i.e. still treating them like human beings and not just a piece of property. There is a concept here where God is telling you that where it was difficult for these people to be set free, for you to set them free. That would require you paying them a certain amount of money, giving them a way for them to be able to build themselves, and they are now free people that they do not have to adhere to any oaths that you have, and yet you are somebody who's pious enough to make sure that they're well done. Now, they're well kept or living comfortably. Notice one of the conditions is that because if they're hostile, then the compensation is to free a believing slave, but you are not supporting the family of the person who is deceased with money because there is hostility. So you might not want to support by money the person who could be, even though they're hostile to you, that they are the people who are in the wrong. So usually when believers have hostility towards each other is because due to the interpretations of what they presume that God has said, or due to certain individuals that have presented information or leaders that have done certain things where they've pinned believers against each other. So sometimes you could be from the believers that are on the right side of history, let's assume. And the other side is technically, if they start to cause problems, they would be creating a trial or a confusion for the people. So they need to kind of still be subdued in a peaceful manner. And giving them resources and money is not something that is going to be always beneficial. But this also works the other way. When you are on the wrong, you're not going to be receiving money. And if you are on the right, you're not going to be receiving money for somebody's error in judgment. But yet we shouldn't be sitting in these conditions where we have hostility between believers. We should be more so understanding that we have to be paying the compensation, almost like a blood money, for the person that you have unjustly murdered. The reason why this is there, it's not that they're going to replace the person who was gone by money, but rather to show that you are very regretful for what you did, that you did not mean it, that this is you trying to make somebody's heart feel a little at ease in regards to them being able to take care of themselves, if it was somebody's husband, if it was somebody's brother, if it was somebody's son, in regards to what they used to produce anyways. But notice how God doesn't give you a set amount. This is something that you need to understand, is because people have different limits. And people are capable of pricing things differently, but you still have to fulfill the verse to its entirety. Giving $1 and thinking that you're fulfilling the verse, this is you lying to yourself, and God is going to tell you at the end that He is all-knowing and most wise. There is something that can be agreed by about where the other side, because they are capable of not accepting any money, to say that they're not interested in any money and that they don't need you to pay for anything. But God also states that because we do not have these conditions in this day and age, and God knows this, that we do not lack them. We lack the means of freeing a person because we do not have that concept of servants and slaves as we did before. There is some form of it, but it's not like you free somebody because at the end of the day, they're just a servant with a wage. Rather, we are now capable of fasting for 2 months consecutively. So what I understand is if there's a day that you missed where you were not able to fast that, whether you got sick or you traveled or something, I don't believe it's where you have to make it up, but rather now your counter starts again, where you need to fast 2 months consecutively, because it's not an easy task, but you did remove somebody's soul from this earth by murder. You've closed some chapters on this individual that he could have had. So yes, it was on accident, but it's not something that is easy to do where you kill somebody on accident, but it does occur. So God is telling you to fast as a way of repentance. Now, there are the people who truly are losers, wherein they kill believers on purpose. This is both believers and disbelievers. And God here is showing you that when you kill a believer on purpose, you are now under the anger of God. You are now a person who has been casted away, and you're going to go to hell for what you did. This is something that's extremely clear. There is ways for you to find your repentance and truly feel regretful. And if God allows you to do a righteous deed to overcome this hurt and pain that you caused, I'm sure that God is forgiving and merciful, but it's extremely difficult for you to come back from such a crime. But there is ways for people to realize that there is a way out. There is a door for repentance if you beg and work hard enough for it. Now, this is a verse where people tend to overlook. These verses, what we were talking about, people dying, murder, and the compensations, we're talking about sometimes in regards to warfare. Now, God is saying that if you are now walking in the earth and if you are moving and mobilizing in the earth and you are doing it in the name of God, God is telling you to investigate. Because one thing that we tend to find with people who do engage in warfare, one of the things that they look forward to are these bounties that they receive. Resources, people, city, whatever it is. People always gain some really quick spoils of war if they are victorious in battle. Now God is saying to you here, be careful, because you do not want to aspire for the goods of this world just because now you're traveling in the land, mobilized, ready to attack if you are being attacked. God is telling you to investigate, to tabayyanum. And if someone is offering you peace, do not transgress and think that, oh, well, they're not a believer, so I'm not going to give them peace. This is both in the physical sense and also in the spiritual sense, in the mental sense. I find a lot of people that can become extremely harsh in the way that they approach religion and other factions and other sects and other people who do believe in God, where those people have no problem giving you peace. They say peace, they treat you well, yet you are saying, well, you're not a believer, so they start to mistreat them. They start to try to ostracize them or cast them away and call them certain names and try to put them down, yet that person is being completely peaceful with you. At that point, it does not matter your theology. It's just you are being rotten when you're not allowed to be rotten, because God tells you clearly here that you yourself, at one point, you are not that believer that you are right now. So give the person a chance. If he's giving you peace, take the peace and give back some peace. And if they're going to be the ones who transgress against the peace, then you're already ready to deal with it, and however God has told you to deal with it. But to be a person to just have a high horse and to keep telling the people, well, you're not a believer, so I do not need to give you peace, or nor do I accept your peace, then this is something that is incredibly broken. We could see this in certain sects in this day and age where they're taught that if someone says to you, peace be upon you, that if they're not from your cult or if they're not from your sect, that you do not return the peace, when God says that if whoever gives you peace, you should return it or say something better than it. So these are verses where God is clearly telling you it is about peace. That if someone is offering you peace, you should give peace. And you should keep fighting until the peace is returned. If someone is not offering you peace and you are walking through the land and they are attacking you, then you have the right to fight them only because these individuals themselves did not offer peace, yet you're ready to accept the peace. And if you are a person who investigated and saw that the person is a believer, not necessarily following the blessed Prophet Muhammad, it is upon you to give that person peace because they believe in God of Abraham. They believe in the creator who created this world, these seven heavens and the earth that you're on or the land that you're on. And they believe that there's a day of judgment and there is no reason for you to attack them just because they're not as clear with who God is to them, or they're not as good as they are with the curriculum that you have in regarding to their own curriculum. Does not mean that now you have a right over these people. The only people you have a right over, where you do not need to engage in a peaceful activity or give them peace, are the people who want to cast you out of your homes, or they want you removed, eliminated, or are pressuring you to change your religion just so that they would feel better about themselves. Those are the individuals where you have clear authority of. So when you are walking through the land and when you are mobilizing and when you are immigrating and moving and traveling and meeting people, you should always investigate and see if that person, you should try to clarify with that person if he is actually being peaceful with you or not. There is something that we see in TV and a lot of things that, and a lot of like the sci-fi movies where they talk about aliens. And when the aliens come and say the aliens are saying we come in peace, you should kind of have that mentality where you, when you are an alien in somebody else's land, you should try to come in peace unless the other side is not accepting of your peace, nor do they want to offer peace. And at that point, every situation is different. We shouldn't be inclining to warfare at every cost or at every angle, but we shouldn't be scared of engaging in military warfare when it's required. These verses are very clear. These verses are also touching upon about these people who are hypocritical in action, where they say peace be upon you and then they try to be as rotten as they can to you. So why are you offering peace when it's not peace that you offer? When you hate me and you're showing the hate and you're trying to drive me out of my religion, you are trying to insult me, you are bringing me down, yet when we started the conversation, you said peace be upon you. So that peace there, I've investigated, and it sounds like it is not an honest peace offering, but rather it was just you using words that you think that they have merit with you on the day of judgment, or they have merit with God on the day of judgment in regards to you. But you'll realize on the day of judgment that you were just actually lying. You were just repeating words, but yet you did not actually offer the peace to anybody. And with that, you're going to find the pain that you deserve. This is very simple. This is very understandable. And you need to try to reassess on what it means to say peace be upon you. Because if you're truly offering me peace, then let's actually stay as peaceful as we can. With that said, I hope you guys are enjoying these. All praise to the Lord of the worlds, and peace be upon you.